climb went on for ages. So long, felt like it was never going to end. So it's now been about 10 days since the UTS 100k and I'm slowly recovering, getting there. The legs feel all good now, though that did take a while. First 3 or 4 days, calves and quads were pretty stiff, but they're completely recovered now. Although I have had a virus which my body is trying to get over, and of course with recovering from the race it's been particularly difficult to kick, so it's still there lingering in the background, but overall I'm getting there. This was actually the hardest race to film out of all the races I've done, this being my first mountain race. And this was because I found that, you know, either if you were going uphill you were using your poles, if you were going downhill then you were trying to balance with your arms on technical terrain, and otherwise your arms would be occupied with trying to shovel in liquid, nutrition, or dipping your hat in the stream just to keep cool. So yeah, this was a tricky one to film, but I'm going to share what I got out on the course and also share some reflections on the day, which I'm hoping will give you a good sense of what it was like to run the UTS 100k, particularly if you're thinking of doing the UTS 100k or one of their other races in the future. So this was it, the start line of the UTS 100k. 715 runners in total lined up for the race. We were split into 2 waves. So the first wave, which I was in, went off at 4:45 a.m, so a nice early start. And the second wave would go 15 minutes later. And on the start line there was nervous excitement, as there often is at these types of events. And people were wondering whether the event would live up to its tagline, which was beautiful beyond belief, savage beyond reason. So we left the National Slate Museum in Llanberis and we made our way up the Llanberis path towards the summit of Snowdon. So just made it to the top of the first climb. We're about 4.7 miles in at the moment and we've done almost 3,000 feet of climbing. So yeah, just trying to pace it for this early part, not go too fast up that first climb and not get the heart rate too high at this point. Keep fluids going in because we're going to have a hot one today, getting up to probably about 25 degrees or something. So for our first climb of the day, we wouldn't actually summit Snowdon. You can see the summit just off in the distance, probably another 40 or 50 metres climbing. But instead here we hung a left and then we went down the pig track and we would save our full summit of Snowdon for later on in the day, about 40 miles into the race. One thing I learned quite early on in this race was that the flow when you're running in the mountains is very, very different. I'm used to running on the South Downs Way mainly, near where I live in Brighton, and that's very much rolling hills, nothing too technical. There's bits of chalk here and there, but mainly it's nice grassy hills that you're running over. And you get this feeling of a flow. You may be walking hills, you may be running down some hills. So yeah, altering pace here and there, but you generally find a rhythm. In the mountains, the flow might be very, very different because it might be that you're walking really, really slowly. It might be that you're scrambling for a bit. You're having to take really great care over technical trails, descents, ascents. So I found that quite difficult early on. I thought, I'm not really getting into a rhythm. I was moving much slower than I usually would be over the trails I'm used to running on. But I very quickly accepted in my mind, well, this is just what the flow is like in the mountains. It's very, very different. And you may be moving ultimately like average walking pace, but that's what it's like with mountain running. Right, we're just coming down the pig track at the moment, and yeah, it's super technical towards the top. There's a bit of a pile up as well, so quite a few walkers out this early, which I was surprised about because we probably got up there around six something, no, maybe 5, yeah, maybe just about 6 o'clock. So people out already making an early start, but just taking it super easy down the pig track at the moment. Don't want to have a fall early on, so just keeping it chilled. About 10 miles in, this downhill bit is really punishing on the quads. Ooh. So it's starting to hot up now, so I've got the Sahara cap out and we're coming up to an aid station just down here at about 15 miles in. 4.5 hours on the clock at the moment, so that's the aid station we're coming to. The downhills have been really hard. You've got to concentrate so much, just because if you put a foot wrong then you could, you know, go over on your ankle. So yeah, the downhills have been probably harder actually. I've noticed I've been overtaking people generally on the uphills and then being overtaken on the downhill, so probably shows that with my training, lack of doing technical terrain, that's probably the key thing. But you know, trying to pace it early on, keeping it in zone 3 at the moment on the heart rate, keeping a lot of fluids going in. So yeah, I'm going to pick up some more fluids down here at that aid station we can see off in the distance. But yeah, going good, enjoying it. It is a beautiful day for it. It hasn't actually got hot until this point. You know, I thought it'd be hot quite early on, but we've had a bit of cloud cover and a bit of a breeze, but it probably is going to pick up later in the day. So with that heat that we had over the weekend and the fact that the mountains we were running in were pretty exposed, it's really important to have a strategy for managing the heat, but also ensuring that you've got enough liquid as you go round. And I think this went pretty well overall. One thing I did was I wore a white desert hat, which had a flap on the back to keep the sun off my neck, and then I also wore a white top, which I switched at halfway at the aid station at Capel, Curig. And I really don't like white as a colour. It's probably one of the colours I like wearing the least. My favourite colours are dark colours like black, as you can see what I'm wearing at the moment. But I thought if I'm going to feel as comfortable as I can in the heat, then white is the best option to go for. So I had that, I had my desert hat. I was dipping my hat in streams as I went past and popping that on my head. And then I also had a 1.5 litres of water carrying capacity with me, and my strategy there was whenever I went to an aid station, I would firstly stop there for 2 or 3 minutes and drink a good bit of water, so I'd leave that aid station hydrated, and then I would also have all of those bottles filled up. It might be sometimes that I'd have 1 litre of water and 0.5 litre of tailwind, and by stopping and drinking at the aid station, of course that did lose me a little bit of time, but in terms of being able to deal with the weather, it would be a really good advantage, because by drinking at the aid station, I'd probably have 300, 400 millilitres, sometimes 0.5 litre. But by drinking that, it would mean that I wouldn't need to drink for, say, another half an hour, and then I could start to use the water that I was carrying with me and ensure that I was hydrated to the next aid station. And I think there was only probably 30 or 40 minutes of the race where I didn't feel I had enough water, but otherwise I had plenty to last me throughout the distance. The ascent up to Carnedd Llewelyn was one of the more challenging and technical parts of the day. It's something that I'm just not really used to doing, using arms a lot whilst I'm out running. But thankfully when we got to the top, we were rewarded with a long runnable ridge and pretty amazing views of the surrounding mountains of Snowdonia National Park. Got to watch my footing. Just taking the chance whilst we're in a bit of a dip on this ridge up here, which we've been running along, to film, because yeah, it's pretty windy, so I don't know if you'll be able to hear me okay, but yeah, we've had some pretty beastly climbs already. We've done about 9,000 feet of climbing. We're just coming up to 19 miles in, so yeah, feeling it in the legs. Yeah, it is tough going, but we're still moving. So we come out the aid station at halfway, Capel, Curig, left there just before 10 hours in. So yeah, I've been making good progress so far. I had a real low patch earlier on where I was just feeling like the climbs and the descents were catching up with me. I was really getting cramp in my quads in particular. Seems to have eased a bit now, so I've given them a bit of a rub down and also taken on some more electrolytes. I just had some miso soup, had a little sachet which I heated up with some hot water at the aid station there. So yeah, feeling good. And also actually the other thing that really helped to pull me out of that hole I had for probably a couple of hours was I met two guys, one from Norway, one from Sweden. I didn't catch their names unfortunately, but if you're watching this, thank you, because you helped pull me out of a bit of a hole where I was feeling sorry for myself. So started chatting just about all things running, enjoying the trails, and yeah, soon started feeling much better again. So yeah, glad to be on the other side of that and back on the road again. Now this is actually probably the first time today where I've been on my own. In fact, can I see anyone? Yes, there's no one behind me as well. Actually, that's one of the things I was surprised about, because I thought people would spread out much quicker, you know, after 15-20 miles, but actually a lot of people have been together and you've been able to see people in front of you and behind you, which makes it much easier for navigating. And Carla was racing the 25k today, which I've just checked on the live trail app and it's confirmed that she's finished, so that's really, really good. So she's now back in Llanberis. She ran 4:36, which is super with all that climbing, and yeah, hopefully she enjoyed it out there and had a good race. So I'll see her back in Llanberis later this evening or maybe tomorrow morning. The climb after the Capel Curig aid station at halfway up Mol Shabod was probably the easiest that we had out of the 7 big climbs in the race. There was still a good bit of climbing in there, probably 2,500 to 3,000 feet, but it was a much softer climb and descent in terms of there being less technical terrain and also more grass to run on. But at the same time, there was still some bogs to contend with. If you're going to run the UTS 100k, I would say expect for your feet to get wet, even if it is really, really sunny. In Snowdonia National Park, they have lots of what I call infinity bogs, just parts of the land that will stay wet throughout the year, even when it is bone dry and really, really hot. It retains the water really well. I got my feet completely soaked, probably 15, 16 times, something like that. And it does make your feet more uncomfortable. It makes you more likely to get hot spots, blisters, even trench foot or macerations. So this is something I would prepare more for next time. I had a change of socks at halfway. I didn't change my shoes, but I changed my socks and dried my feet out, reapplied anti-chafe on them. But what I didn't use was some cream that I've got called trench cream, which is hydrophobic, which ensures that water doesn't stay too much around your feet. So in future I would have put that on. I thought because it's up to 25 degrees in the conditions we were running, my feet probably aren't going to get wet, but of course they did. So that's something I'd bear in mind for next time. So we just come out aid station number 6, I think it was, 39 miles in. Not feeling too bad at all. Energy is quite good. Legs, however, are stiff, but as to be expected. But we're just about to ascend Snowdon for the second time today. So we've got a nice big climb coming up. Three climbs in total left. So this race is basically made up of 8 climbs in total, but we've got now 3 left to go, but Snowdon, big one coming up here. So just coming down off Snowdon, came up the Watkin path, which was a horrible climb, went on for ages, so long, felt like it was never going to end. Quads are feeling it a bit, so I'm using the poles on the downhill, and we've got a checkpoint at the bottom of the hill, just down that way, and then we've got 2 more climbs left. Sun setting, as you can see, just over there. So overall my training went pretty well for this race. I managed to get some good climbing and descending in. I also did some different training blocks where I was focusing on building firstly speed and my VO2 max, then some longer intervals, some speed endurance as well. So the general picture looked good. The big thing that was missing that I could have improved upon was getting some more technical terrain in there. And I had it noted in the final block that I did, the endurance phase of my training, that I would be getting out to the mountains, but unfortunately it just wasn't practical. I wasn't able to, with work commitments, with family. Then it was just too tricky to get out there because the nearest mountains are about 5 hours drive away. So the only time that I got out to Snowdonia to recce the route was last summer. That was before I started my training for the race at the beginning of this year. Though I did manage to get one other mountain run in, which was when I was up in Scotland. Although I say mountain, it was a place called Carnedd Llewelyn, which is along the West Highland Way, and roughly about 1,000-foot climb, so not really a mountain, but at least it was quite technical underfoot, similar to Snowdonia. But that is something big that I would really try to address in my training next time. If I had more time, if I was able to get out to the mountains, that would be ideal, because nothing beats getting out there. So after 103 kilometres and about 6,500 metres of climbing in the mountains, we made it back to the National Slate Museum in Llanberis. And here we are, finishing just after 2:45 AM in the morning. That's Rob there. We did the last quarter of the race together, so big thanks to Rob. It was great to run with him. Shout out to Mike as well. We ran a lot of the second half of the race together, and I found this made a real difference, buddying up, pushing on those climbs together, and ultimately getting to that finish line. Well done. Yeah. Good. There's a slog at times, but good. Good overall. Thank you very much.
Well done. Yeah.
The cheeky hill at the end, where I was like, oh, it's the last hill, and there's another hill.
And there's another one, yeah.
So that was my first experience of mountain running out at the UTS 100k. Big thank you to everyone who left messages of support, who dot watched, or gave me any tips and tricks on mountain running in the lead up to this. And I'll be sharing in the next video a couple of bits on the kit that I found worked, and also the kit that I found didn't work so well. So that'll be coming up on the channel very, very soon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good week, enjoy your running, and I'll see you all in the next one.